It sits in the corner. You never think about it. It knows every website you've visited, every device on your network, every message that's left your house. It's been there for years, quietly watching, quietly logging, and in March 2026, the US government looked at that device and said, it's a national security threat. Every major brand you have ever heard of, Asus, Netgear, TP-Link, EERO, Google Nest, Linksys, all of it, gone. And the only routers left standing? The ones your ISP rents you. Let's talk about what a router actually does, because a lot of people are making policy decisions, clearly don't understand it, and that matters a lot. Your router is the single choke point for every digital thing in your home. Your phone, your laptop, your smart TV, your thermostat, your kids' tablets. Every packet of data from every device flows through that one box. Before it touches the internet, it's doing network address translation, deciding which device gets which data. It's running DHCP, handing out addresses like a traffic controller. It's maintaining a firewall, the only wall between your private network and the entire outside world. If someone compromises that box, they don't just see your traffic, they see everything. They can redirect where DNS queries go, which means they can redirect where you think you're going. They can intercept unencrypted connections. They can watch every device talk to every other device. They can use your router to attack someone else entirely and make it look like it came from you. That last part, remember that. Now, here's where we have to talk about something real. 3 Chinese state-sponsored hacking groups have been systematically compromising consumer routers across the United States. Not to spy on you, not specifically, not to see your browser history. They were using your router as a costume. Now, here's how Vault Typhoon worked. They'd find a router, maybe it was at end of life and hadn't been patched in maybe 3 years. Maybe it still had a default password the owner never changed. Maybe its management interface was exposed directly to the public internet. They'd compromise it silently, completely invisible. Then they'd route their attack traffic through it. So when the US intelligence analysts tried to trace an attack on American critical infrastructure, power grids, water systems, telecommunications, the trail ended at somebody else's house in Ohio or Florida. Not a government server, not a known malicious IP address, someone's house. Vault Typhoon's core technique is called living off the land. They use tools already built into Windows, WMIC, NTDS-Util, NetSH, PowerShell, instead of custom malware. This means they don't trigger antivirus or endpoint detection software. But first, they need to get their traffic somewhere clean. A compromised home router provides a residential IP address. Residential IPs are trusted. They're not on block lists. They're indistinguishable from normal traffic. This is the entire point. Vault Typhoon built something called the KV botnet. Hundreds of compromised Cisco and Netgear routers, many of them end of life, forgotten by their owners, quietly converted into a shadow network, a ghost infrastructure built on top of ordinary people's home networks. The FBI found it. They got a court order. They remotely removed the malware from the infected routers in January 2024. Vault Typhoon rebuilt it. Flax Typhoon ran a different operation, the Raptor Train botnet. By 2024, it had infected more than 200,000 devices worldwide. Routers, security cameras, DVRs, network-attached storage, all of it weaponized, all of it used to hide traffic and launch attacks. And Vault Typhoon went further. They didn't just compromise home routers, they got inside AT&T, inside Verizon, inside the systems the US government uses for court-authorized wiretaps. Chinese state actors were reading American wiretap data for months before anyone noticed. The US government looked at all of this and decided the problem was where routers were manufactured. On March 20th, 2026, a White House-convened interagency body, a group of national security officials from across the executive branch, made a formal determination. Consumer-grade routers produced outside the United States pose unacceptable risks to national security of the United States. 3 days later, on March the 23rd, the FCC updated what it calls the covered list, the list of equipment that cannot receive authorization to be sold in America. Historically, that list targeted specific companies like Huawei, ZTE, Kaspersky, individual actors deemed too dangerous. This time, they banned an entire product category. Every major brand, every country, not just China, not just adversaries, every foreign-made consumer router, period. ASUS, made in China or Taiwan, banned. TP-Link, made in China, banned. Netgear, a US company, also manufactures entirely abroad, banned. EERO, Amazon's router brand, manufactures in Asia, banned. Google Nest Wi-Fi, banned. Ubiquiti, headquartered in New York, manufactures in Vietnam and China, banned. The government banned a product category that America doesn't make. Now, there's a process called conditional approval. Manufacturers can apply to the Department of Defense, now called the Department of War, or the Department of Homeland Security for an exemption. They have to submit a full bill of materials showing every component, where every piece of firmware was written, where this device was designed, assembled and tested, and, critically, they have to commit to a timeline for moving production to the United States. It's not a permanent fix, it's a temporary hall pass. And as of mid-April 2026, exactly 3 companies had received it: Netgear, Adtran and Amazon's EERO. Each approval lasts until October the 1st, 2027, 18 months, and then it expires. There's also a firmware problem nobody's talking about clearly enough. Your existing router isn't banned, you can keep using it. Retailers can keep selling whatever was already in inventory before March 23rd. But here's the catch: after March the 1st, 2027, 1 year from now, foreign-made routers that are on the covered list cannot receive security patches or firmware updates unless they have conditional approval. A limited waiver was issued to keep updates flowing until that date. After that, either get approved or stop getting patched. The FCC's Office of Engineering and Technology issued a waiver stating that existing authorized foreign-made routers may continue receiving firmware updates that mitigate harm to the US consumers until March 1st, 2027. This waiver covers security patches and functionality updates. After that date, any covered router without conditional approval would be legally unable to receive updates under the current rules. The FCC said it would reassess before the expiration. Whether that happens is unknown. And then, 2 days before this video was written, the FCC quietly expanded the ban. April 24, 2026, FCC expands the ban to cover portable Wi-Fi hotspots and LTE/5G home internet devices, fixed wireless CPE, portable Wi-Fi hotspots, fixed wireless home internet devices, consumer LTE and 5G CPE units. All of it. Mobile phones with hotspot features are excluded, for now. An entire category of consumer networking hardware banned, because the government spotted something it missed on the first pass. So let's talk about who benefits from this. The government's stated reason is national security. Foreign routers are being exploited by foreign adversaries. We need American hardware running American networks. That's a real concern. The Typhoon campaigns were real. The compromised routers were real. The infiltration of US critical infrastructure was real. US intelligence officials have stated on record that Volt Typhoon's goal wasn't just espionage. They were pre-positioning, getting inside infrastructure they could disrupt during a future conflict. Specifically, in any scenario involving a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. US intelligence assessment: Volt Typhoon pre-positioned inside US critical infrastructure to disrupt military communications during a potential Taiwan conflict. That's not a cybersecurity story. That's a war preparation story. So the threat is documented. The concern is legitimate. But the solution is a product ban on hardware that America doesn't make, implemented immediately with a conditional approval process that had approved exactly 3 companies in its first month. And here's the question nobody in government is answering clearly. If you can buy a new foreign router and there's no American routers, what do most people end up with? Think about how this plays out for a normal consumer. Your router dies. You go to Best Buy, the shelves have whatever inventory was already there before March the 23rd. Still legal to sell, but the pipeline is cut. No new models coming. Stock depletes. Prices go up. You check Amazon, same thing. A shrinking pool of already authorized hardware slowly draining. You ask your ISP if they can help, and suddenly there's a very helpful customer service representative telling you that for just $10 or $12 a month, you can rent their gateway device, and they'll handle everything ISP provided gateway. $10 to $15 a month, $120 to $180 a year. Hardware controlled by your ISP. Firmware controlled by your ISP. Configuration controlled by your ISP. The ISPs have the legal resources to navigate the conditional approval process. They have procurement teams and lawyers and relationships with manufacturers who can set up token US assembly operations to qualify for exemptions. The small brands don't. Industry observers are already saying it out loud. Non-technical consumers are going to end up renting equipment because there's nothing affordable to buy. And the monthly equipment fee that people have been successfully avoiding by owning their own router is coming back. TP-Link's US market share. 65% of home and small business routers. Supplied as branded ISP equipment by over 300 internet service providers. Think about that number. 65%, 300 ISPs handing their customers TP-Link hardware. And investigators had already confirmed those routers were being turned into a botnet, targeting the Department of War, the agency formerly known as the Department of Defense. The concern was real, but the outcome of the solution might be that people who have been trying to charge you for hardware for years now have a government mandate helping them get there. ISP provided residential gateways. The combo modem router units, Comcast, ATE and Spectrum supply are explicitly covered by this ban. ISP provisioned equipment falls under the same conditional approval requirement. The difference is that ISPs have the scale to pursue those approvals and the resources to commit to US manufacturing timelines. Individual router brands selling $70 consumer hardware do not have the same leverage in that process. Here is where we have to talk about the people who figured this out years ago. The pfSense people, the OPNsense people, the HomeLab crowd, people who looked at the consumer router market and the black box firmware, the unpatched vulnerabilities, the default credentials, the total lack of network visibility, and said, no thanks, I'll build my own. Here's what that looks like. Instead of a consumer router, you take your commodity x86 hardware, small form factor PC, a Netgate appliance, an old Protect-LE Vault, something you pulled off eBay. You install pfSense or OPNsense, open source firewall software. And now you're running a real firewall with a real operating system you actually control. Open source firewall OSs runs on x86 hardware, full stateful packet inspection, VLAN segmentation, snort, Suricata IDS, PF blocker NG, DNS over TLS. You control everything. You can see every connection leaving your network. You can run snort, real-time intrusion detection, systems scanning traffic in real time. You can set up VLANs to put your IoT devices on their own isolated network, so your smart bulbs can't talk to your laptop. You can run PF blocker NG and block entire categories of malicious infrastructure before a packet ever gets through. Your router isn't a black box anymore. You know exactly what it's running because you configured it. You know what firmware it has because you applied it yourself. You read the logs. This is the gold standard for home network security. This is what security professionals have been recommending for years. And technically, pfSense users are fine. The FCC ban specifically targets consumer-grade routers, devices primarily intended for residential use, installable by the end user. Enterprise firewalls are classified separately. Netgate's pfSense appliances, Fortinet, FortiGate, SonicWall, they're not consumer grade. The ban doesn't touch them, regardless of where they're manufactured. So if you're running pfSense on a Netgate box or a Protect LE Vault, or on some retired Dell Optiplex you found for $80, you're outside the scope of this ban entirely. The barrier to entry is real. It costs more. It requires actual technical knowledge. OPNsense releases security patches roughly every 2 weeks. That's not a grandma-friendly update cycle. But the people who built their own routers specifically because they didn't trust consumer hardware, they're watching this unfold with a very specific kind of feeling. Because they were right. And the government's response doesn't actually fix the thing they were worried about. Here's the part that should bother everyone, including people who've never heard of pfSense. The ban only prevents new models from getting authorized. It doesn't force anyone to replace their existing routers. So the millions of Americans with end-of-life, unpatched, vulnerable hardware that was already being exploited by Typhoon campaigns, they keep running it because there's no affordable replacement. Because the foreign hardware that was actually getting active security patches, the newer ASUS models, the newer TP-Link models with actual vulnerability disclosure programs, those can't be authorized either. The attack surface didn't shrink, it just got older. Security researchers, including analysts at Georgia Tech Internet Governance Project, have argued that the ban may worsen security by slowing the router upgrade cycle. The Typhoon campaigns specifically targeted end-of-life devices with unpatched firmware. The ban doesn't accelerate replacement of those devices. The devices that were actively receiving patches are the ones newly blocked from market entry. The correlation between foreign-made and insecure is not well established when the actual vulnerability pattern was unpatched firmware and default credentials, regardless of origin. Let's be precise about what actually caused the Typhoon campaigns to succeed. Every security advisory, every postmortem, every CISA and NSA report says the same thing. Unpatched firmware, default credentials that nobody changed. Management interfaces exposed directly to the public internet. End-of-life devices running software that hadn't seen a security update in years. Those were the attack vectors, not the country on the label. The unpatched CVEs, the factory default admin passwords still sitting at admin, the HTTP management port accessible from anywhere on the internet. Microsoft confirmed it. Vault Typhoon specifically targeted devices manufactured by ASUS, Cisco, D-Link, Netgear and Zytel because those devices allow the owner to expose HTTP or SSH management interfaces to the internet. American companies. On that list, root cause of a Typhoon attack. Unpatched firmware plus default credentials and exposed management interfaces. Root causes the ban addresses. Country of manufacture. What would actually help? Mandatory security update commitments. If you sell a router in the United States, you commit to patch for a defined number of years. ASUS actually had this. The FTC settled with them and required a proper vulnerability disclosure program and update commitments. That model, applied universally, would do more than a country of origin ban. Mandatory default credential changes, false unique passwords during setup. This is already required on many new devices, but it's not universal. Make it universal. Transparency. Transparency about what firmware is running. Require vendors to publish CVE response times. Require disclosure when a vulnerability has been actively exploited. None of that requires banning Taiwan. But here's the thing that ties all this together and makes it genuinely alarming. Salt Typhoon, the most sophisticated of the three campaigns, didn't compromise home routers. They compromised the ISPs. They were inside AT&T and Verizon, inside the telecom infrastructure itself, accessing court-authorized surveillance systems. The proposed solution, centralizing more network equipment under ISP control, making consumers dependent on ISP-provisioned hardware, doesn't reduce that attack surface. It concentrates it. One successful ISP compromise now has potential reach into every customer on their provisioning system. The government's answer to the most serious documented attack was to push more infrastructure toward the entries that were successfully attacked. The attacks were real. Chinese state-sponsored groups built covert networks out of compromised home routers and used them to tunnel into American power grids, water systems, and telecommunications infrastructure. They pre-positioned for a potential disruption during a future military conflict over Taiwan. They accessed American surveillance systems for months without detection. That happened. The FBI confirmed it. Chinese officials tactically admitted it. The threat the government identifies is legitimate. The solution they chose bans hardware America doesn't make from countries that just aren't adversaries, with a conditional approval process that approved 3 countries in its first month. And that may push ordinary consumers towards renting from the ISPs who were themselves among the most significant attack vectors. And it won't touch the hundreds of millions of unpatched end-of-life routers already sitting in American homes right now. Your router is still in the corner, still running whatever firmware it's shipped with, still probably on the default password, still doing exactly what it was doing before March the 23rd. The government drew a line. It just drew it in the wrong place. The FCC foreign router ban, effective March 23, 2026, expanded to include hotspots. April 2024, 2026. Existing routers still legal. Firmware update waiver expires March the 1st, 2027. US manufactured consumer router alternatives available today, 0.